A woman, devastated and exhausted, left her son's hospital room, bidding him a tearful farewell as he lay gravely ill. She froze when she heard the words of a nearby gypsy, which seemed to carry a strange weight. Sarah Castro wiped her tear-stained, reddened eyes with a crumpled tissue, fighting against the sobs that threatened to escape her throat. This brave, resilient single mother, who had worked tirelessly to build a successful pastry business and raised her son, Jesus, with strong values, now found herself utterly speechless, barely able to form a coherent thought. What had started as an ordinary day, with no hint of the life-altering events to come, had quickly turned into something unimaginable. That morning, Sarah had woken up early, 30 minutes before her son's alarm was set to ring. Following her usual morning routine, she had moved into the kitchen with purpose, cracking fresh eggs into a sizzling pan while the comforting aromas of melting butter and a warm breakfast filled the cozy apartment. Just as she slid the perfectly golden Spanish omelet onto a ceramic plate, the antique porcelain kettle began to whistle. At exactly 7 a.m., the familiar sound of Jesus's steps echoed through the hall, marking his entrance to the kitchen with his usual punctuality, a discipline she had instilled in him from a young age. "Good morning, dear Mom," he greeted her, planting a soft kiss on her cheek as he took his seat at the kitchen table. "Good morning, my love," Sarah replied with a warm smile, setting his plate gently before him. "Would you like some tea or freshly squeezed orange juice today?" "Hot tea, please," Jesus answered with a nod, enjoying the breakfast she had lovingly prepared. As they shared their meal, mother and son exchanged thoughts about the previous day and planned for the evening ahead. A cherished morning ritual for Sarah, especially since Jesus's evenings were often busy with schoolwork and his part-time job. These calm, joyful moments were often the only quality time they had together, providing a brief escape from their busy lives. "Tonight, after a long day, I'm planning to go to the movies with Amanda," Jesus casually mentioned between bites. Sarah's smile wavered slightly at the mention of Amanda Hurtado, a girl who, with her tight blouses and short skirts, seemed to embody a carefree attitude that Sarah found somewhat unsettling for her teenage son. Nevertheless, she chose not to intrude too much into his dating choices. "How lovely, my dear," she managed, masking her hesitation with a supportive smile. "Do you need any extra money?" Jesus shook his head with a polite but firm frown. "No, I actually have enough saved up in my bank account for my monthly expenses. What movie will you be watching tonight?" Sarah asked, hoping it would be something appropriate for his age. Jesus simply shrugged. "I'm not entirely sure yet. Amanda said she'll pick something special for the night." Suppressing a knowing smile, Sarah reminisced about her own youth, recalling how she and Jesus's father, Miguel, would use movie outings as an excuse to steal kisses in the back row. The rest of the day unfolded smoothly. Sarah busied herself with baking cupcakes and cookies for the evening sales, while Jesus was occupied with school assignments. But by 10 p.m., their world shattered with a frantic phone call from Amanda. Her voice, loud and panicked, pierced through the phone line. "Sarah, please, I need your help immediately. We were attacked out of nowhere, and Jesus was seriously hurt." Amanda's distress sent a chill through Sarah, her heart pounding wildly. "What? You were attacked? Where are you? What happened?" Sarah demanded, panic rising in her voice. "Please hurry. We're at Mora Hospital," Amanda sobbed, barely able to speak through her own tears before abruptly ending the call. Sarah, heart racing, grabbed her car keys and rushed out of her house. In seconds, she was in the driver's seat, adrenaline propelling her as she sped towards the hospital, gripped by a fear unlike anything she had ever known. Sarah ignited the engine and pressed down on the accelerator, feeling a surge of adrenaline as the car sped forward. The tires screeched sharply as she rounded a corner, sending her racing down the street. Typically a calm and cautious driver, Sarah's demeanor behind the wheel had transformed into something reckless and desperate. She ignored stop signs and red lights without hesitation, inciting a chorus of angry horns and obscene gestures from other drivers. But she barely noticed. Her only thought was to reach her son as quickly as possible. She roared into the hospital's emergency entrance, her disheveled appearance and frantic behavior catching the immediate attention of a nearby nurse. "My son was brutally attacked in the middle of the night. Please, could you tell me where he is?" "His name is Jesus Castro," she implored, her voice trembling with urgency. The attentive nurse, after checking her records, swiftly guided Sarah to a private waiting room. Inside, Sarah found Amanda, Jesus's girlfriend, visibly distraught, her face streaked with tears. "Amanda, what happened?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling, her heart gripped by fear and dread. Amanda looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "We were just leaving the theater," she stammered, fighting to speak through her sobs. "Then 3 men came up to us. They looked so dangerous, like they were out to cause trouble. One of them had a knife, and he attacked Jesus over and over again. There was so much blood, so much." Her voice broke, and fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. Sarah's knees weakened, and she felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. The impact of Amanda's words hit her like a physical blow, causing her to collapse into the nearest chair, her face pale and stricken with horror. At that moment, a doctor entered the room, his expression somber and serious, causing her worst fears to take form. She looked at him with desperate, pleading eyes, silently begging for a glimmer of hope. "Mrs. Castro," the doctor began, his voice heavy with concern. "I'm very sorry. Your son's injuries are severe. The knife penetrated deeply, damaging multiple vital organs and causing critical harm to his spinal cord. We have done everything within our power, but despite our exhaustive efforts, his condition remains extremely critical." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, their gravity settling heavily on everyone present. "You should prepare yourself mentally and emotionally for any outcome that might unfold in the coming days." "No," Sarah whispered in disbelief, shaking her head as tears streamed uncontrollably down her cheeks. Deep, anguished sobs overtook her frail body as she clutched the doctor's coat, her voice choked with desperation. "Please don't let this happen. Don't take my son from me. I'll do anything. I'll sell everything I own if it could save him. Just please don't let my baby die." The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his eyes filled with profound empathy. "Mrs. Castro, money isn't the issue here. Right now, it's about how his body responds to this trauma. His internal injuries are extensive." He trailed off, the words too heavy to finish. "Please, doctor, I need to see him," Sarah begged, her voice barely a whisper, choked with grief. "Please let me say goodbye to my son." The doctor nodded solemnly, guiding the devastated mother to the intensive care unit, where she could see her son, each step heavy with the weight of unimaginable sorrow. In the dim, sterile hospital room, Jesus lay unconscious, his fragile body encased in tubes and wires, the steady, faint beeping of machines echoing in the silence as they monitored his tenuous vital signs. Sarah collapsed into the chair beside his bed, taking his limp hand into hers, caressing his pallid cheek. "My beautiful boy," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mommy's here, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. I love you so much. Don't leave me," she sobbed, her anguish spilling out in waves as she began to pray, pouring her heart and soul into each word. "Dear God, I beg you with everything I have, please give him the chance to live, to have a future filled with hope and happiness. Please hear my pleas, my dear God, and let your mercy touch him now in this moment of despair. Almighty Father of the universe, sit by his side, heal his wounds. I will be forever grateful for your compassion, my beloved Lord." After what felt like an eternity of whispered endearments, tearful prayers, and broken sobs, Sarah leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to her son's clammy forehead. As she reluctantly pulled away, she embraced Amanda tightly, both too overwhelmed to speak. It was just outside the hospital entrance where Sarah's life took an unexpected turn. A weathered old woman, wrapped in ragged clothes, blocked her path, studying her with cloudy eyes. "You must find the boy's father," the Romani woman announced in a thick accent. "Bring him here. His presence may be the spark to revive the flame of life." Sarah stared, stunned and bewildered by the strange interruption. Who are you? I don't have time for nonsense like this." But the old woman held firm, her gnarled hands gripping Sarah's arm with surprising strength. "The path ahead will be difficult, but you must walk it. His life may depend on it." Shaken, Sarah pulled away and stormed to her car, dismissing the woman as a deluded vagrant. Yet, as she drove away, the words of the Romani woman echoed hauntingly in her mind. She knew where Jesus's father was. They parted ways over 15 years ago after a bitter argument, but she still had his last known address. The journey was nearly 350 miles, but without fully realizing it, Sarah found herself programming his location into her GPS 8 hours later. She finally reached a quiet neighborhood in Caracas, parking in front of a modest one-story house bathed in the crimson glow of the setting sun. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself and approached the door, knocking firmly. The door opened to reveal a man in his mid-40s, whose confused expression quickly shifted to one of shock. Sarah Castro? What on earth are you doing here?" Despite the agony weighing on her heart, Sarah couldn't help but swallow hard at the sight of her ex-lover, Miguel Gonzalez. He was still as handsome as the day they'd met, though his dark hair was now streaked with gray, and faint lines creased the corners of his once youthful eyes. His green eyes she could never forget. "Miguel, I need your help," she managed to say, her voice breaking as tears welled up. It's Jesus, our son." Her body shuddered with grief as she collapsed against his chest, clinging to him in despair. Miguel's arms instinctively wrapped around her trembling form, holding her tightly as she poured out her heart. He led her inside, and they sat on the sofa as she struggled to calm herself enough to explain. "Jesus, he was attacked. He was stabbed multiple times. The doctors, they're not sure if he'll make it." Miguel's face went ashen as the words struck him like a blow to the gut. "Oh God, no, please no." The raw pain and terror in his eyes that Jesus had inherited, struck Sarah deeply. In that moment, she realized the weight of the mistake she had made, denying Miguel the chance to be a father over a misunderstanding fueled by wounded pride. "Miguel, I'm so sorry," she whispered tearfully. "I never should have." Her words faltered as she remembered the bitterness that had driven them apart. He had left briefly to care for his ill grandmother, promising to return as soon as possible. But fate intervened when he was hospitalized after stepping in to defend a woman from attackers. By the time he recovered, Sarah had cut him off entirely, refusing to listen to his reasons. "I tried to tell you about Jesus, but my pride stopped me," Sarah admitted, voice trembling. "Sarah, if I had known, if I'd had any idea you were carrying my child," Miguel's voice was thick with emotion. I know, Sarah replied, fresh tears staining his shirt as she held him close. "I was hurt and angry, and I couldn't see past my own pain. I robbed both you and Jesus of so much." Miguel gently lifted her chin, brushing away her tears with his thumb, looking deep into her eyes, the same deep blue oceans he had been lost in all those years ago. "We were young and foolish," he murmured. "The only thing that matters now is that we're here for our son, no matter how little or how much time he has left. I need to see him, Sarah. He needs to know I'm here for him." Sarah nodded, a tentative smile pulling at her lips as she studied the face of the man she'd never truly stopped loving, despite the years and resentment that had kept them apart. In that moment, she silently vowed that if Jesus recovered, she would do everything in her power to mend the broken pieces of their family. The drive back to the hospital passed in a heavy silence, both Miguel and Sarah lost in their thoughts, reflecting on their fractured family and all that had been lost. When they arrived, Sarah led Miguel straight to the ICU, where his heart sank upon seeing his son's fragile figure surrounded by a tangle of tubes and wires, his life teetering on the brink. "Oh," Miguel's voice caught in his throat as he reached out a trembling hand, gently brushing his son's pale cheek. Tears slipped down his face unbidden, the years of suppressed dreams of fatherhood shattering around him. Sarah slid her arm around his waist, resting her head on his shoulder as they stood together, watching over their son's frail body. After a long, silent moment, Miguel turned to the doctor, who had been observing the emotional reunion from a distance. "Doctor, may I have a few moments alone with him, please?" Miguel's eyes pleaded with the doctor, who nodded solemnly and gestured for Sarah to join him outside. When the door closed behind them, Miguel pulled a chair close to Jesus's bed, taking his limp hand between his own calloused ones. "Hey, champ, I'm your dad," he began softly. I know I've got a lot to make up for all these years I've missed. I don't have excuses. I messed up. I should have been there." He paused, swallowing back the torrent of emotions threatening to spill over. "But that's going to change. You hear me, Jesus?" Miguel leaned closer, his voice filled with raw emotion. "If you fight this, if you keep fighting like the strong young man your mother raised, I'll be here. We'll have all the time in the world to be the father and son we should have been from the beginning." He brushed a stray lock of hair from Jesus's forehead, his gaze absorbing every detail of his son's face as he silently prayed for a miracle. Miguel studied his son's face intently, committing every detail to memory. "You have to pull through this, son. Your mother has already endured so much because of my foolishness and selfish pride. She needs you. And, God help me, I need you too, more than words could ever express." Miguel's shoulders began to shake with suppressed sobs as he silently poured out more than 15 years of buried hopes, dreams, and fatherly regrets over his unconscious child. "I'll be the dad you always deserved, and we'll do all the things fathers and sons are supposed to do. We'll throw a baseball, go camping, and I'll even sit through your silly school plays if you want," he murmured, a shaky laugh escaping his lips. "Anything to make up for lost time. Just don't leave me now. Not when I finally found both of you. Please, Jesus, fight. I love you, son." He finally fell silent, slumping into the hard plastic chair beside the bed, one hand still clutching Jesus's, while the other shielded his tear-streaked face. That's how Sarah found him almost an hour later, peeking into the room with her own eyes glistening with renewed hope at the raw, tender scene between father and son. Outside in the austere waiting room, Sarah found Amanda, still keeping a silent vigil, her eyes red and weary. The poor girl looked up, hope and worry mingling in her expression as Sarah approached. "Any change?" Sarah asked, shaking her head gently, feeling a pang of compassion and guilt for the trauma Amanda had endured alongside their family's turmoil. She wrapped Amanda in a motherly embrace, smoothing down the girl's tousled blonde curls in a comforting gesture. "Not yet, honey, but we have to stay strong and keep praying for a miracle," Sarah whispered softly. "None of this is your fault. Jesus is strong, and he'll get through this." Amanda simply nodded against Sarah's shoulder, fresh tears escaping as she clung to the older woman's quiet strength and calm reassurance. They stayed like that for several long moments until a stir in the ICU waiting room caught their attention. "That's the doctor," Sarah gasped, pulling back and rushing toward him, with Amanda close behind. Sure enough, the doctor was approaching, his expression unreadable behind his surgical mask. Sarah's heart clenched with fear, until she noticed the unmistakable crinkle of a smile in his eyes above the mask. "Mrs. Castro," he began, lowering the mask to reveal a broad smile. "You'd better prepare yourself, because it looks like we're witnessing a genuine miracle here." Sarah's knees nearly buckled with relief, and Amanda let out a joyful cry as the doctor continued. "In the last few hours, Jesus's vital signs have stabilized remarkably. His brain activity has increased, and his body seems to be recovering rather than deteriorating, as we had feared. Honestly, I can't explain it, but somehow, against all odds, he's pulling through." "Oh, thank you, Lord," Sarah breathed, grasping Amanda's hands as they both dissolved into tearful, euphoric laughter. "Can we see him?" she asked eagerly, already heading for the ICU entrance with Miguel joining them, having overheard the joyful news. The doctor nodded, his own face alight with joy. "Of course. Just try not to excite him too much. He's still very ill. But yes, this is nothing short of a miracle." Miguel slipped an arm around Sarah's waist as they followed the doctor. Both were speechless at the unexpected turn of events. Years of bitterness and regret had brought them to this moment, a second chance to rebuild their family. When they reached Jesus's bedside, Sarah leaned against Miguel's sturdy chest, silently grateful for the words of that strange gypsy woman. In the days that followed, Jesus's condition continued to improve at a remarkable rate, leaving the medical staff in awe. Miguel and Sarah rarely left his side, keeping vigil and murmuring quiet words of love and encouragement. Finally, on a crisp autumn morning nearly a week later, Jesus's eyes fluttered open. His gaze was unfocused at first, before settling on the two figures leaning over him, their expressions filled with tearful relief. "Mom," he croaked, his voice barely more than a hoarse whisper. "Well, what happened?" "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah soothed, gently brushing his forehead, blinking back tears of gratitude. "You're in the hospital, but you're going to be okay. You gave us all quite a scare for a while." Jesus frowned, his eyes drifting to the second figure beside his mother, a man who looked familiar, with kind green eyes that matched his own. Miguel stepped forward, clearing his throat nervously as he took his son's hand. "Hey, champ, I'm your dad, Miguel Gonzalez." Jesus's eyes widened in surprise and confusion as years of questions were suddenly answered. Sarah squeezed Miguel's arm, offering silent support. "I know I haven't been around, and there's no excuse for that," Miguel continued, his voice wavering with emotion. "But I'm here now, son, and I'm not going anywhere. If you'll have me." He searched Jesus's face, fearing rejection after so many years of absence. But slowly, as realization dawned, Jesus's features softened into a warm smile. He gave his father's hand a faint but heartfelt squeeze. "I'd like that, Dad," he replied, his voice filled with raw emotion. In that moment, Miguel felt like the luckiest man alive, overwhelmed by gratitude and joy as he held his son's hand, silently vowing to be the father he should have been all along. The past dissolved, and only the future mattered now. The future they would finally build together as a family. The following weeks saw father and son beginning to forge a tentative bond, working to rebuild the connection that had been lost for so long. Miguel filled Jesus's days with stories of his rebellious youth, peppered with humorous anecdotes about Sarah that made the boy laugh, even through his pain. For her part, Sarah simply cherished the sight of her two men getting to know each other, her heart swelling with joy as she watched the bond between them grow stronger. The turning point came on a sunny afternoon when Amanda came by for a visit. Her usual cheerful demeanor was dampened by lingering guilt over the attack. Miguel and Sarah tactfully excused themselves, giving the young couple a bit of privacy in the hallway. Miguel took Sarah's hands in his, looking deeply into the eyes that had haunted his dreams for over 15 years. "You know, we've been given a second chance here," he murmured, his voice low, but filled with a quiet intensity. "Most people don't get an opportunity like this, to press the reset button on their biggest mistake." Sarah felt her breath catch as she registered the intensity of his gaze, the undeniable spark that still crackled between them after all these years and misunderstandings. "Are you saying you want to give us another chance?" she asked, her voice wavering as she tried to guard her heart, though it fluttered with a long-suppressed hope. Miguel reached up, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His calloused fingers brushed along her jawline as he leaned in closer. "I'm saying I never stopped loving you, Sarah Castro. Not for a single day in the past 15 years. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you and Jesus, if you'll let me." He leaned forward, ready to meet her lips in a kiss they had both longed for, but Sarah placed a hand on his chest, her eyes glistening with unshed tears of joy as she shook her head softly, smiling with a mixture of sadness and relief. "After all this time, all the mistakes and heartbreak we've put each other through, you'd think I wouldn't let you sweet-talk me so easily," she scolded him playfully, her voice catching. "But I'm too old and wise now to keep holding back happiness. From you, from Jesus, and from myself." This time, it was Sarah who bridged the gap, pulling Miguel into a deep, tender kiss as she melted into his embrace, effortlessly reigniting the flames of a love that had never fully died. In that moment, all the years of pain and regret seemed to fade, leaving only the warmth of a new beginning. What did you think of this story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family to spread the message of love and forgiveness. Remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming your way.